Support comes from the Janice Hawkins Cultural Arts Park on the main campus of Troy University, featuring the International Arts Center, the Fred Nall Hollis Museum, and the Huabaoju Gallery. More information at troy.edu/artspark.
From Troy Public Radio, this is In Focus, and I'm Carolyn Hutchison. If you've spent time in North Alabama and North Georgia, you may have heard the legend of Granny Dollar. For the Storyline book series on In Focus, we're joined by journalist and author Neil Wooten, who researched her 100-year life and described the history she witnessed in his book, Granny Dollar. He joins us from Fort Payne, Alabama, at the Fort Payne Depot Museum. And we first broadcast this program in November of 2024. Neil Wooten, welcome back to Troy Public Radio.
Thank you.
Neil, so many of our listeners were intrigued with your book, With the Devil's Help, which is actually about your childhood family. But another book has a lot of people in North Alabama and North Georgia remembering the person this book is about. The book is called Granny Dollar. Who was she?
Granny Dollar's real name was Nancy Emmeline Callahan, and at age 79, she got married finally to a man by the name of Dollar, and later she became known as Granny Dollar because she was such a grandmother figure to so many. Her dad was full-blood Cherokee, 6'5", 275 pounds. Granny Dollar herself, and she was the oldest of 26 brothers and sisters. She had two mothers, which was very common in the Cherokee culture back in that day. She was 6 foot tall herself and knew all the old Cherokee ways, and she was just an extraordinary woman. And once she settled in the Lookout Mountain area, when she was 100 years old, she found herself homeless. People sought her out because of all of her great stories, because of all the incredible things that happened in her life. So that's pretty much who Granny Dollar was.
Well, Neil, every time I go to Northeast Alabama, the Fort Payne area, and Northwest Georgia, people talk about Granny Dollar. So how did you track down her actual biography?
Well, there's a lot of stories that had been written about her, probably a dozen articles. She was just a favorite of local journalists back in the turn of the century, the early 1900s. There was an original article had been written in the Progressive Farmer, 1928, January and February issue, and no one could find it. And finally, I found it at the Raleigh, North Carolina Public Library. They had every copy of the Progressive Farmer on microfilm. And we finally figured out by then that it was two full articles about Granny Dollar, and that's what kind of got the interest started, and everybody started seeking her out and writing about her then. So, and it took me about 6 months to find everything I could written on her, to put it together in a chronological order to write the novel.
To everyone's knowledge, when do you think she was born?
At the time of the forced relocation, she was 12 years old, so she was probably born late 1825 is what they believe. They didn't have records back then. The Cherokee did not have records, but she remembers being 12 years old when they started marching people off on the Trail of Tears.
Her story reflects American history. Can you share the history that she witnessed and how she witnessed it?
You know, it's amazing what the woman witnessed. Obviously, the forced relocation. She was a midwife even at age 12. She had delivered babies. But when Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act in 1835, the Cherokee thought they were safe. They had married with white settlers. They were accepted, they had accepted the white settlers. But in 1838, they decided it would include the Cherokee too. So her and her family actually hid out during that time. For 3 years, they hid out in a cave. So she witnessed one of the worst, darkest points of our history, that forced relocation, which would become known, of course, as the Trail of Tears because so many Cherokee died. And then finally, in her 30s, she got engaged. She delivered goods to stores all across Georgia and Alabama. She would pick them up in Marthasville, which we now know as Atlanta, and she would deliver them everywhere. And for a single woman back in that day, she had to be very tough. She was never robbed. So she was quite a woman, but she lost her fiance and her dad in the same battle. And that's when Sherman went through Atlanta. And she describes that in one of her stories as waking up in the middle of the night. And they lived about 30 miles from Marthasville, Atlanta. She describes it as waking up because she thought it was thunder. And she went outside to look, and there were no clouds in the sky. But the sound, it was Sherman's cannons 30 miles away in Atlanta. And so she lived through quite a time. And then again, she didn't get married until she was 79. And then she lost her husband, and the people that were renting her little house to her needed it for family. So she found herself homeless at the age of 100. And she took her 6 chickens and 1 dog named Buster that hated everybody on the planet but her. And she just went walking through the woods on top of the Lookout Mountain. And she came across what was known back then as the Master School. It was a school for needy boys. She just walked out of the woods, and these young boys are out there playing ball, and they see this 6-foot-tall Cherokee woman with a dog and 6 chickens and a pipe in her mouth. They just was mesmerized by her. And then when she started telling them Cherokee stories, they put her up in one of the cabins, and that's where she lived the rest of her life. She lived 6 more years until she died.
Neil, you mentioned a cave a minute ago, and didn't her family hide out in a cave when they were trying to round up all of the Indians? The cave you talk about in the book, it was Saltpeter Cave. Did you actually track that down?
Yes, it's still there. If you go off the side of the mountain, Sand Mountain, at Buck's Pocket, where she lived with her family in a little hut, down at the bottom, right before the river. Now, the river there, the Tennessee River, is wider now because in 1940, the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, flooded that to put in the dam for the electricity, but the cave is still there. Saltpeter is actually found in every cave in the South. Saltpeter is what they used to make gunpowder. In the Civil War, the North had learned how to make it out of chemicals. In the South, we were still using saltpeter. Saltpeter is what happens when bat guano mixes with the limestone sediments that you find in any cave in the South, and over time it forms an explosive thing called saltpeter. But the name of that cave, and the cave is still there, is called Saltpeter Cave.
You know, when you think about Granny Dollar and the places she lived, you could almost track her route today.
Oh, yes.
Through northeast Alabama, northwest Georgia. And you say she lived out her final years. This school was actually near a famous state park, wasn't it?
It's right before you enter DeSoto State Park, yes. Right on the edge of Little River Canyon. That's where the school was.
What's the takeaway to your thinking of Granny Dollar's story?
Well, the thing that Granny Dollar tried to teach, and when she came to the school, the guy who had started the school was worried that here's another mouth to feed. But Granny Dollar was pretty self-sufficient. She taught them all how to plant. She had all the Native American, the Cherokee folk medicines, and she taught all the kids. And pretty soon she's actually helping the school. So the thing that she preached herself was that the white man wears shoes on his feet so that he can't feel God's green earth. Then he works for so long and then retires, and he doesn't go to nature. Her whole point was that you have to be one with nature. If you're going to be a Cherokee, if you're going to be a human being at all, and she thinks that's a lot of the ills in the world are caused by people staying out of touch with nature.
That may be a lesson for today.
Yes.
Well, Neil, I want to thank you for sharing the story of a remarkable Cherokee woman.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Joining us from Fort Payne, Alabama, was Neil Wooten, author of the book Granny Dollar. At the time when we recorded this in fall of 2024, Neil served in many capacities. Contributor to the Huffington Post, columnist for the Mountain Valley News, and managing editor of Mirror Publishing, and curator of the Fort Payne Depot Museum. Thanks for joining us for the Storyline book series from In Focus. Our program is a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Carolyn Hutchison, and this is listener-supported Troy Public Radio.